What is up? Welcome back to another episode of the Not Safe for Sunday podcast. I am Josh, and we're so happy to have you with us today. We have a special guest with us today. I'm going to introduce him first. It's one of my very, very good friends, my buddy Spencer. Spencer, what's going on, my man?
Man, I'm happy to be here. Very excited. Got some good questions. Pastor Ken and I have a shared love of A Tribe Called Quest. You know, it's a great connection.
Yeah, me too.
Daniel definitely a Tribe Called Quest fan.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely is. Yeah, and as Spencer just said, I'm joined again by Daniel. What's up?
I'm excited to be here.
I know you are.
I like having a fourth person.
Yeah.
Good dynamic.
It makes a round table out of a rectangle.
It's also
table.
so you stop getting ganged up on.
Well, it reinforces the theory of just how out of touch Ken is with his age, you know?
Oh, no. We are joined by Ken. Ken, you going to take that from him?
Says the guy who has no idea what we're referencing. What me and the youngest guy here are referencing.
We're referencing rappers from like the 70s, dude. You were alive. I wasn't.
Okay.
The 70s. Oh, this is...
It's already off the rails.
This is not Sugar Hill Gang. This is
I'm out of touch and I'm out of date
Rappers
still.
delight.
I don't know Bad Bunny and I don't know Trap Quest Love or whatever that is. Like, Quest Love.
those are two completely
Tribe
different.
Quest Love.
This episode is brought to you by the Westport Chamber of Commerce.
There's a Tribe Called Quest.
Tribe Called Quest.
And then there's Questlove,
Who's a person.
Is an individual.
Nah, Jimmy Fallon, right? He's
He's the drummer.
the drummer.
Now, he's in the band called The Roots.
He was in
Yes.
the band.
Yeah. You might run into some
Roots.
copyright
I know
issues
them.
with that.
Oh man! But we are so happy to be joined by Spencer today, and Spencer is currently engaged, due to be married in August, right?
Yep, August 10th.
Woo!
Hooray! Hooray!
I thought that would get more applause.
Yeah. Well, it's a
I want to clap for
yeah.
myself.
We don't want to make the mics pop.
We're
We don't want to
excited.
make them pop. We are excited. We are very excited for Spencer. But being a young man, how old are you, Spencer?
24.
So Spencer's 24 years old, being a younger man, getting ready to jump into this thing called marriage. He came up with a few questions that he has for us all being married men. I've been married I'm going to be going on 6 years this year. So that's pretty,
Had a boy, dude.
yeah, pretty big for me. Daniel, how many years have you been married
I'm
for?
going to be 7 in August.
7 in August.
Crazy.
Congratulations,
Thank you, man.
And then Ken, how many years?
47!
When was Abraham Lincoln president? Wait a minute. I'll actually be a big milestone, 25 this November.
Oh, huge.
Enter the claps again.
Congratulations. 25, that is big, man. That is big. Oh, I was 10, 9.
Okay, now everybody can say how old they were.
Spencer wasn't born.
I wasn't born yet.
Just to give you reference.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But so Spencer has some questions for us. And we want to be here, be able to lift him up and kind of be support for him as men within the church, men that are believers in Christ. Spencer's been in the church probably your whole life, I would guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's leaned on me for a few things, and I've been blessed to be able to have open conversation with him about a lot of different things. So it's just something that we want to kind of continue to support him with. So basically, married in August, getting ready to get married in August at the very least. What are you looking forward to the most? Are you nervous? Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I feel ready to go. It still feels far away, but yeah, I feel good.
Yeah.
Been a while coming.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. And there's a lot that goes into the preparation. There's a lot that goes into the preparation for this, so I'm sure your head's still spinning a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's going to keep going afterwards, too. The first few months, I remember it's like, I can't believe this is real. Like, I can't believe we're married. Like, this is my wife. And I even though I still don't feel like an adult, but it's like I'm an adult now.
I don't feel like that either.
Yeah.
2 kids in, dude.
Yeah, I'm 2 kids in, and I still don't feel like adult. I'm like, Jeremiah, what cartoon are we putting on tonight? Oh, you want to watch Ben 10? You got it.
Not going to complain about that.
Yeah. So, you have a nice list of questions here. So let's kind of kick it off. What do What do you got to ask the wise sages of married men that you got here in front of you?
Oh yes, the Council of Nicaea over here. Let's start with a easier one, slightly easier. So, when it comes to marriage, there's a lot of like sacrifice, constantly, the constant like dying to yourself, right? So as a man, I guess, like, how do you just always, every single time you like want something and your wife has a different opinion, you just like fold, or do you ever get your way? how do you, where's like, is there a balance? Like, how do you like think about that?
I'm abstaining from this question.
I'm glad we started with the easy one.
Never fold. Okay, I think
you got to know when to hold.
I'll start by just saying that, like, I think the whole theme of your question, which is like compromising and sacrificing, this marriage is a process, just like sanctification is a process. You know what I mean? And this is going to be get ready for the clearest mirror that's ever been held in front of you. You know what I mean? For your life is marriage, because you have been living single, so basically living for yourself. And I don't mean that in a self-centered way, but you're living for yourself for so many years. And now you are living with somebody, and, biblically, you're preferencing a person higher than yourself, right? So the big mirror is going to be held up, and you're probably going to start realizing how selfish you really are, because we never admit how selfish we really are, how much we're into our own thing and all that. So the big mirror will be held up, and it will be through, different opportunities and circumstances where you have to make that big decision. Stay strong or fold, right? And I say that tongue in cheek, but like, there's going to be the times where it's like, no, I want to do this, this is, and then she's going to be looking at you with those big eyes and saying, but Spencer, and so, and it's just, you'll succeed some days and do the right thing. And I'm not even saying which one is right, which one's wrong each time, because it could vary. You're going to succeed some days, you're going to fail some days, but in the end of the day, you're going to it's going to be a lot of self-reflection. You're going to realize, okay, this is who I really am, because that's what marriage does on the outset. And it is through the navigating, sacrificing, and compromising that you do kind of figure out who you are and where you're at in a realistic way, because we never want to admit where we're really at.
That's and that mirror analogy that you just used, that's such a good point, because let me tell you, like, my first few years of marriage, I figured out exactly how selfish I was, and it was very selfish. It was very selfish to the point where, like, I couldn't even hear. Melissa couldn't even tell me anything. It could have been the greatest idea of all time. And I was just so stubborn. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Like, because I was just so stuck in like I've gotten myself to this point in my life now. Like, I know how to live my life. And then you realize, like, oh, okay, it's a lot of selfishness. There's a lot of like, for me, it was like, you're trying to change me. Like, that's not who I am. You're trying to change me. And at the end of the day, it's not that my wife was trying to change me. I truly think that God was trying to change me, because he was polishing those rough edges that I had. Like I tell her all the time, when Melissa met me, I was selling dime bags and bootleg DVDs. Like, and now I care about curtains and throw pillows. Like, it's a complete change. But it was a shift of the things that were important to me, and the things that I really wanted to hold on to that I thought were beneficial for me in my life, and having this other person that had an outside view of how I was living my life and the decisions that I was making, and kind of the attitude I had towards a lot of things to kind of bring different ideas to me. And eventually, like, through deeper conversation, and not just like, and sometimes arguments, you know what I mean? But not just like overnight, it didn't happen. It was a slow working of, okay, like, some compromise is good. Yeah, sometimes you're going to need to stand up and say, no, this is what I think is best. And it might be an argument. It might be a discussion for a later time or whatever, but you guys have become intertwined and become two as one. So eventually there's going to have to be more conversation, more dialogue about whatever the situation is to kind of break down whatever that wall is, and eventually you'll figure it out, or she'll figure it out. And Ken's right. There's it's not your way every time. It's not her way every time. Sometimes if you get your way, it might not be the right way. So it's definitely a learning process as you go, but definitely got to include some compromise and all that. But you can't just give away the farm every day. You know what I mean?
I'll speak on, like Josh said, kind of how Melissa was like a refiner for you, right? And so I think for Bree, for me, was like, she's my grounder, because like I'll have a lot of great ideas and all these I'm a kind of a visionary sometimes, and I get an idea and I want to go all the way, and I want to, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go buy a tractor for $15,000 and just start excavating stuff, and she's like, whoa, let's throttle that back, like in a healthy way. Let's throttle it. Let's think this through.
Yeah.
Let's like actually give us some thought. The latest thing was I wanted the tractor. It was like, I could plow my driveway and do yard work. And she's like, it snowed once in the last 2 years we've lived here, like a plowable amount of snow. So you're gonna spend $15,000 for what cost us $100 to get plowing. Like that. Let's do the math. So for me, she's not necessarily like shooting me out of the sky all the time, shooting down my ideas, but I think she brings like that healthy counter idea, which I think is we sort of need. We need that counterbalance at times, because left out of check, we know that sometimes we can get a little out of control. So I think communication is huge. Communicate about the smallest things, and the larger ones become easier to talk about. Don't let the small things slide, and the large things become a lot more difficult to discuss, because building that communication and that conversation regularly, even about something so small, it trains you to be disciplined to have those larger conversations. And so the compromising and the sacrificing, it's there's going to be times where you have to do a full fold and swallow your pride, and it is what it is. But a lot of times, if you can both swallow your pride and meet in the middle with a middle ground, that's just the healthiest place to ultimately come to. But sometimes you can't meet in a 50-50. It's either a yes or no. And so you have those conversations, and you have to figure out when it's time. And I think it's like, in that case, when it's time to fold, each person should be folding equally at times. It can't be you giving in all the time and she's giving nothing, because that's not relational, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's you're just kind of falling to the ground and doing whatever she wishes. So I think it's a healthy balance, really.
Yeah, and I think also too, just understand it's a lifelong thing. Like, the goal is now oneness. You're going from singleness to oneness. That's the journey. So the oneness means that, like, there's going to be things that of you that are needing to be cut away. There's going to be things of her needing to be cut away, and that's not like, there's no like menu or blueprint for that necessarily. It's just kind of like doing life. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you're doing your best to follow biblical precepts, right? Love your wife like Christ loves the church, and she's supposed to submit to that love, and it's just this give and take, and this walk together. But little times along the way, it's like, oh, I just lost a finger on that one. You know what I mean? I lost a kneecap over there. And that's okay. It hurts at the time, but it's part of oneness. You're journeying towards oneness, and it's a lifelong journey. Because 25 years in, and there's still times that I just through an occurrence, through a circumstance, my selfishness gets pointed out. You know what I mean? Or it gets exposed, I should say, is a better word.
Yeah.
So it's just life, man. You're just doing life together, and the goal is oneness, though. You're no longer two unique, separate people. You are, but you're journeying towards oneness, as the Bible says.
And Daniel, you remind me so much of myself, dude, because I've had that same conversation with Melissa. Like, I'm going to go out, like, we're going to go buy a house. Like, and we ended up doing it. Like, we sit and talk about it, but like, I'll have these big lofty ideas that I'm like, we're just going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to, and she's very more like modest about a lot of different stuff. And that's where you, Spencer, you and Melissa are very much, you guys are deeper thinkers. I'm all energy.
No,
all the time.
I was pointing because I feel like you. Like, I'd be like,
Oh,
let's go. Let's go. The tractor sounded good. When you were saying
thank
that,
you, man.
I'm like, that's.
You should tell my wife that.
I'll put that in my prayer journal that comes back around for you.
Thank you, dude.
I'm telling you, but those things happen, and we've kind of brought it up a little bit before, but I'll say, because Daniel also said this, and it was a great point, that this compromise, all these things, sacrificing and compromising, should lead to more communication with your significant other. And those opportunities to communicate, starting off little and getting to the bigger things, those opportunities to communicate are huge within your relationship, because the more that you can openly and freely communicate with your spouse, in my opinion, the better that your marriage is going to be, because now it's, no matter what it is, now Melissa she'll know what I'm thinking before I even get to that point, because we've talked about different things so much. So it's like, oh, I understand why we're doing this, what we're doing, and it's because we have those open dialogues. We'll spend hours just sitting on the couch and just talking about God knows what. Like, but just to have open communication is such a big thing, and I think that's where this sacrificing and compromising really can lead to and can really be beneficial to you and your marriage in the future.
When I think as a man, like, you need to be the standard keeper of your home too, and so we have a great responsibility to set the pace for our wives in terms of like even how we communicate. So, you know, and if something is bothering us and we're just quick to fly off the handle, well, what we're stewarding our home to say is like, this is how we talk about stuff.
Good point. Good
you
point.
know, and so as men, as prideful as we can be, that's where you need to swallow your pride and sacrifice. Is like, I can't just go off the cuff and blow up about this. Like, I need to set the standard of my home, which is going to be peace. And so we're going to talk about this, and we're going to try to keep the peace the best we can. Does it happen all the time? No, we're human. And so, you know, eventually things sometimes do escalate. But I think our responsibility as men is to be great stewards of what God's given us, and that's our home and our wives. And so stewarding the communication, making sure that we're on top of it, and that we hold accountable, like, hey, we're going to talk about this. You might escape for a little bit. And like, for me, I need time to process before we can talk about something. You know, if I start talking off the cuff with a disagreement and things start escalating, before you know it, I'm saying stuff that doesn't even make sense, and then I'm digging myself in a hole because she's desperate for communication immediately. And if I give it to her, like, I just don't even know what I'm saying. So I end up saying things that are like not mean or aggressive, but I just don't make sense. And then it's like, oh man, like, yeah, that's not what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't know, you know, so we just have to figure out how you both communicate. So she knows, give him a little bit of time, and I'm not going to avoid the conversation forever, but we got to talk about this, and we're going to talk about it. It's not going to be left in the air, because eventually everything like kind of left in the air lingering, the next small trigger is going to light that up like a gas in the air. Boom. It's going to send an explosion. So we can't just avoid. We have to set the pace as men to make sure that we are having these conversations about everything.
Such good points.
I like
Stu.
that. Yeah.
Such
Setting
good
the pace,
points.
understanding.
Because I've been in that same headspace as you were. I'm like, we're in the middle of having this conversation, and I need to like process. I need time to like figure out, because I will just fly off the handle and just say whatever.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like understanding of what this conversation is about, and to the point where it's like, all right, and like you said, you got to separate sometimes, and you might not separate on the best terms. Like, you might separate really mad at each other, but make sure you're coming back humbly. Make sure you're coming back with an apology. And then once you've had an opportunity to process what's actually going on, make sure you're then being able to speak calmly and collectively.
You need to know when the conversation is no longer fruitful, and like quit before it explodes to a point that's unnecessary, and say, hey, let's put this on pause for a second. Let's gather our heads, gather our composure. Let's come back to this, you know, because there is certain times where you'll just keep talking. Before you know it, you guys are just talking in circles, but the conversation's getting more and more amped up, more aggressive, more aggravated, more emotional, because you're just rehashing both the same points, and you're both not in the right headspace to talk about it anymore. So take a break, step back, and then you can come back, and I'll realize, like, wow, I'm like, I can start to come back down to earth and say, you know, I can meet you here. You know, I can meet you where you're saying to meet you, because now I'm not as emotional. Now I've had time to process it. I've had time to think about it, and I can meet you where you are, you know, because sometimes we'll dig our heels in the sand, not even realizing why, but we just need that time to process. And so figure out your communication styles, figure out what works for the two of you. And that helps with the sacrificing and the compromising, you know.
That comes with such maturity too, because we talk about breaking generational curses, right?
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a family of arguers, and I just get such energy off of arguments. Like, I love arguing. So, like, it's...
Join a debate team, dude.
Yeah, that's what my mother always used to say to me. Thanks, Mom. But, so it was like, I had to, like, get to that point where, like, I know I'm being, like, fed off of this, and I'm getting energy from it, but this is not beneficial at all for where we're trying to get to. It's only benefiting me in a very negative way. It comes with maturity.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. That's good. I think this next question kind of rolls into that pretty well. So, can you talk a little bit about just kind of like transitioning from being single to becoming like married and being like the spiritual head of your household now, and like having all this kind of, and how do you kind of navigate that? You know, like a young man, or even or if you get married older, I mean, figuring out how to deal with that.
Well, you know, this is a lot of misconceptions when it comes to this topic, because, you know, and I preach about it from time to time, or it comes up in a sermon, you know, where, you know, man is the head of the fill in the blank house. Well, that's not what the Bible says. It says that man's the head of the wife. So there's this kind of idea, you know, that it's just like man's in charge of everything, and you know, he's really responsible for everything, and he's not responsible for everything. He's responsible first and foremost for his wife. So that head, being the head, means headship, you know, which is direction, protection. And Paul talks about in Corinthians, where he breaks this down. He says that Christ is the head of man, and man is the head of woman. Not every woman is wife. And so there's this kind of direction, and there's this like authority, not in the way that we, you know, like boss people around or push people around, but in the way that there's accountability, and being somebody in a place of authority means that you're responsible for. And so husband being head of wife is, I'm responsible for her, you know, to protect her, for guidance, direction. And a big part of that starts out spiritually, you know, that I would be the one, you know, who is being the initiator of spiritual things. And not to say that, you know, she's less spiritual than me, but the buck would stop with me. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, just, you know, probably in our day, but probably for a long, long time, it's like, you know, wives are dragging husbands out of bed. Let's go to church. Come on, let's go to church. It's Sunday. And the husband kind of just becomes like one of the kids, like, no, 5 more minutes, you know? And I mean, it should really be the other way around, is that men should be setting a strong example for how, you know, spiritually, emotionally, how we should conduct ourselves. You know, as Daniel kind of pointed to it earlier about the stewardship of, you know, of the position that you're in. And so as a man, you know, that headship doesn't mean like, oh, I'm bossing my wife around, because, you know, everybody, you know, in marriage, there could be so many different levels, you know, and whereas one man, you know, may have had a longer walk with God and maybe a stronger relationship and more intimacy, and the wife is, you know, kind of new, you know, to Christianity or to her faith, and to you know, going to church and things like that. And so not for him to, you know, throw a chain around her neck and pull her, but to lead by example, you know. And it kind of goes back to the last question a little bit, as you said, because there's some sacrificing involved. You know, love has to be sacrificial. And so I'm not pushing around and demanding and just saying, okay, this is what we're doing, like it or not. I'm leading by example, but understanding that is my prime responsibility, is to love, is to lead spiritually, to lead emotionally. And that example, you know, and that really that image of what a Christian man is what's going to carry through. And her blessing, her healing, her relationship with God is going to prosper because you're putting that first. You know what I mean? Because that blessing, that's that headship. It's the Father, Jesus, you, and her. And the blessing just runs down. And as long as you're in position, being submitted to Christ, she's going to receive blessing. If you're acting the fool and you're out of position and you're not submitted to Christ, and I mean that in like lifestyle and character and all these other things, she's going to suffer for it, even if she's still in position, because a very important part of that line is missing. And so that's really, I think, what, leading spiritually and what the man's position is being submitted to Christ, and in being submitted to Christ, that in turn means I'm going to love my wife correctly. I'm going to be sacrificing in my love. Her direction, her protection is going to be my key objectives, that she's secure, who she is in Christ, emotionally, physically in the house and all these things, because I'm submitted to Christ. Why? I'm just acting like Christ towards my wife.
He said a lot of things there. And they were, no, but like, I hope you're listening, because those are really, really good things. Same thing for the listener. Like, if you're getting married or newly into a marriage, like, those, so many big things that he just said there. And if you're asking me, because you're talking about a transition from singleness into being married, into being the head of your wife and taking over as, quote unquote, the head of the household, once you're married, you get that role that second. That doesn't mean you're going to be good at it.
That's true.
There's gonna take a long time for you to get good at it. I wasn't good at it for a while, but with, like we talked before, with the communication, with the devotion of yourself to making sure you're living in a lifestyle that is, like Pastor Ken just said, in line with God and Jesus, so that the blessing pours down to your wife and then eventually your family, if that's what you choose to do. It takes a while to get to that point. It takes dedication. It takes discipline to get to that point. And a lot of those things come with the communication with your family and your wife. And a lot of it comes with prayer and studying of the Bible, and just really being able to sacrifice those things that you think are important to you. And then once those things are gone, you're like, that's really not important. And that was keeping me from the role that I'm supposed to have here. You know what I mean? So don't expect it to happen in the blink of an eye. Yeah, you get the title, your husband. In the blink of an eye, you are the husband. Yeah, that doesn't mean you're a leader yet. You have to work at being a leader.
I think important too is realizing, like, as single men, or for a listener who's a single woman, like, when we're single, if we're not even managing what's on our plate, you're managing one person, yourself. You're not managing that well. What makes you think that when you get into a relationship that it's all going to come together? Even spiritually speaking, I'll tell, before I started dating Bree, I'm like, I was living in sexual sin and doing all these things, and I'm like, oh, like, when I get in a relationship, like, it'll all get better. Like, these things will get better. You think it gets better? Like, if you don't pull these things in under your control now, you think a relationship's going to make it any easier? No, not at all. And so when it comes to singleness, I say manage yourself well. That's what I tell young people all the time. And I've said it from the pulpit, and I say it young adults. It's like, make sure you're managing your finances as a single person. You can't manage you can't manage your home. You can't manage your time now. Well, what makes you think you're going to manage two schedules? And then later on when kids come, you think it's going to get easier? No. And so I think singleness in becoming, like, I know you say spiritual head of your home. I think a lot of the spiritual even flows from the physical. If your home is in chaos, it's hard to be spiritually in tune. Because how can we keep the peace of God in our home if everything else is in disarray? Because we can't, keep our home clean, or we can't take care of what we have on our plate. And so what makes marriage all the better is when we come into it with our best foot forward. Already, like, what did we talk about a couple of podcasts ago? Is like, married problems are just single problems that were never dealt with.
Yeah.
And so,
that's good, yeah.
Deal with your problems. Don't wait until marriage and think they're going to go away, because the reality of it is they're not. because now there's two people coming together. There's two opinions. It's not just
Two sets of
you.
problems.
Yeah, there's two sets of problems. And so you have double now on your plate, especially as the man. You have double now because now you have to take care of yourself. And not only that, but now you're to take care of your wife and your home, you know? And so I think even learning how to delegate and release in certain areas where you're not gifted. You know, I know my wife is way more gifted in certain areas. And so I delegate and I release that portion of control to her, you know, because she's way better at it. So just because I'm the man doesn't mean I need to be in charge of it. So knowing each other's strengths and where to delegate to keep the peace of the home. And, you know, even that flows down to spiritual things as well. You know, you need to set that standard and that pace. And I think that's our job as men, is to be those standard and those pace setters.
Yeah, it was episode 2, entitled "What's Wrong with the Men."
What's wrong with them?
We can refer back to that, but we talked about this, you know, where like even back to like the garden and Adam and Eve, and it's like, here's Eve totally exposed, being tempted by Satan, and where's Adam? You know, so her security is you know, she's the priority, you know, in your life now. You know, doesn't mean that you don't have other things going on, but she is the priority. And we went on to talk about, you know, where guys, you know, just get so involved in their hobbies, their work, their this, their that, and the wife becomes this distant afterthought, you know, and just kind of take it for granted because it's like, oh, we're comfortable now and everything's good. So if she stops becoming the priority, she's going to be insecure real quick, and she's open to deception, just as Eve was, where Adam was there, but apparently missing and silent, you know what I mean? So her being the priority, you know, is all about headship, is that you're being responsible first and foremost to who you've been given by God, right? We believe that our wives came from God, and so, you know, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor with God. So we know this is a blessing. This is something that God gave us, and so how do we store this relationship in such a way where we're doing our part to, you know, be the spiritual leader? And that really just starts with loving as Christ did, meeting needs, making sure she's secure, being present, you know, and a secure wife, man, that's the best wife you can have. You know, if she's secure, man, what a blessed life you guys will have together. That's her primary need, and so that's your responsibility.
And I think even at the beginning of the relationship, like, it's easy to kind of like both come together and you're both trying, you're both putting all the effort in. And then as time goes on, and then even once you get married, it can start to be easy to just let down the walls and just become lazy or become complacent, because it's like, oh, well, I have her, you know, I don't need to keep trying. And it's not something we tell ourselves intentionally, but unintentionally, I think we start to become lazy in different areas of our life. And so I think always making sure that we're being intentional in our effort, you know, in our relational effort, always pursuing her, making her feel loved. I'll tell you what, like, I know when I am making her feel loved, because everything in the home is operating way more like peacefully, joyfully. Like, if I am not loving her intentionally, like, you can tell things just start to fall into disarray a little bit. And so making sure that her cup is full, her tank is full. Make sure you know her love language. You know, for my wife, it's like, it's words. And so, you know, if I think that she's going to speak to me in my love language without me talking hers, you know, I'm delirious, you know? So I know that to fill her cup, I'm going to be talking to her. I'm going to be communicating with her. I'm just going to be having that dialogue. And I know that her cup's going to pour back into me, you know, and we should be doing that for one another. So I think it comes down to really knowing each other and having deep conversations about how you both feel loved and how you both are filled, and what drains you as well. So, you know.
Okay. Now, as you guys were answering, I was like, dang, this conversation kind of go one of two ways. I'm not sure which way it's going to go next. And then when you said the love language thing, I was like, okay, it's going to go this way.
All right.
because. Okay, so this a slight backstory. A few weeks ago, I had been at my apartment. I was reading this book about sex, you know, and just in preparation. And I was kind of mind blown at what I was reading. I was like, this sounds like a lot. I thought this was gonna be easy. Like I gotta do this every time.
I gotta do this every time.
That's exactly what I thought. Like, and then Josh happens to call me out of the blue just to, I don't know, just like say hi or something. And I started telling him,
Just
I
dropped
was
a
like,
bomb on the kid.
yeah. And I was like, wow,
He
this
did
is
drop it
crazy.
on me.
Yeah, he told me a little bit, but I was like, okay, I gotta bring this to the podcast. But so like, can you talk about, and go as in detail or as not in detail as you want, but what are like really the realities of sex within a marriage? Like, what does that really look like? How do you approach it?
Well, Spencer, when a man loves a woman,
Let me tell you about the birds and the bees,
When a
boy.
mommy cat and a daddy
I
cat
just
love
said-
each other very much.
I knew we'd get here at some point, so I just had to get ready for just explain, just to make sure you understand.
Oh yeah,
No,
yeah.
just
Yep, I got you.
Um,
I had the health class.
the realities are.
It is a reality.
It is a reality.
It's a
This
reality.
reality is a reality. Is that there's so much that goes into this part of marriage, because I think of expectation that could be realistic or unrealistic, upbringing and the model. Did you and when I say like a healthy like relationship, I mean like parents, your parents, her parents. Was there a healthy dynamic between them? Like, in other words, could you tell that people loved each other, respected each other? Because sex is a byproduct of our love for our partner, right?
Absolutely.
So if there was a skewed or unhealthy or toxic type of dynamic and relationship there, it impacted your view. I mean, our views of sex, believe it or not, are formed much younger than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And because we don't even realize what's happening, but as young kids, we're sponges, and we're just absorbing the world around us, right? So the dynamic between man and woman starts to get formed, and we have an understanding of that, even though we might not see like the intimate details of what happens in the bedroom. We're getting an understanding of how two people interact and how they coexist and how they love one another. So sex becomes the physical manifestation, or the physical what's the word I'm looking for, expression of what is happening emotionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that goes into it, and I think the key is just to really be open and honest and not let it be taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually, I mean, I would say it's well over 90% of the time, parents are too uncomfortable to have an open talk about sex with their kids, even though it's such an important talk to have. So if it's taboo, and then it stays taboo into marriage, it's just, you're leaving room just for offense, and you're leaving room for all kind of things to happen, because it should be open. Sex is a beautiful and wonderful part of marriage, to be able to express.
Amen. Oh, sorry.
This guy's about to start
Yeah.
speaking in tongues. It's a beautiful, wonderful expression, right? But it is only a reflection of emotional intimacy. So if you guys are open and emotionally intimate, you're able to talk about everything, and not, I know it takes some time, because it's like a feeling out process. But if that's the practice that you have of just really not to be scandalous about it, but leaving nothing off the table, talking about what has to be talked about, meeting each other's emotional needs, sex is going to be that physical expression of that.
Absolutely.
And it's only going to be as good and healthy and wonderful as your emotional connection is. And I mean, I could, tell examples of counseling people, where like, where one was so obviously a byproduct of the other, but there was no recognition of it, because why? Well, because who talks about it? We don't really talk about it a lot in church, that's for sure. And I can understand why in some respects, but it should be talked about at least in the counseling part and the premarital stuff, and in forums like this, not safe for Sunday for sure, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it needs to be, because unfortunately, most people never really just had that kind of talk, and where it could be an open and healthy and wonderful thing. There's a lot of, I'm not going to take all the time, but there's a lot of contributing factors, right? Because of pornography and different perversion.
Yeah.
So now my idea of sex is totally skewed. Right. So now I'm going into it, and I got all kind of stuff going on in my mind, and I don't know what's good, what's healthy, what's unhealthy, and so when sex is a scandalized taboo thing, for a lot of different reasons, right? Aforementioned, the fact that I probably saw porn from a younger age and all that stuff. If I'm not open and talking about it and I'm hiding it, it just leaves more room to hurt one another. It leaves more room to, to kind of continue on in this unrealistic, jaded view of what sex is.
Yeah.
Ken's going to start a Christian sex ed class.
Anytime. When a man loves a woman.
Birds and the bees. But I'll tell you one thing that I thought of when it comes to this, because I don't know if you're feeling like this pressure about it. Is that fair to say? Is there a little pressure going into this?
No, not so much pressure,
Okay.
but more of just like, this
He's
sounds
got
like
this.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like I thought
there's
this was gonna
definitely
be.
work involved.
I don't know what book you read.
I thought this was gonna be easy, but this is like a lot to remember.
Was it a how-to or was it more like deep emotional stuff?
You may want to cross off the rest of the question. This could really go on for a bit.
I'm gonna tell you one thing, and this is a big thing, and this is something I learned in my marriage is, like Ken said, that's a communication between you and your wife of how, when, whatever. That's all something that needs to be communicated between you and your wife. Don't let the world tell you how many times it's supposed to happen, how often, like what it's supposed to be like, because all that does is create division. That creates division between you and your wife, where there's obviously a connection there and love there. While where there's supposed to be love, the world is going to look to divide you. So don't let anybody else tell you what it's supposed to be like, what it's supposed to look like, how many times you're supposed to do it, like any of that stuff, because it's just going to create this havoc that you don't need. And like Ken said, I was introduced to pornography way too young, and all it did was make things harder for me as I got older, and what my understanding was of having a loving relationship in that way. And I did have sex before I got married when I was younger and dating and all that stuff, and all that did for me was make me even more confused, and it just muddied those waters so much. So like for the young people, it's just not worth it. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would just not do it, because but at those times, especially in high school and stuff like that, there's so much pressure because the world puts this pressure on if you're a man, how many women are you sleeping with? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
So now there's this race that you're trying to get to keep up with everybody else and all these other things. And that's where your value is as a man, right? But when you get to be a man and realize what's important in your life, you'll realize that's not it. Like, and it just the confusion that it caused. And now you have these feelings for this person that you're probably never going to be with again. You know what I mean? It causes way too much. Just keep down the path that you're keeping down. Save it for that special person. And when you are with your wife, when you guys get to that point, like Ken's right. Have that communication, have that talk. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Yeah, it's taboo. It's a little, you blush a little bit when you talk about it or whatever, but like it's a serious thing because it's a serious act that you're committing with somebody that you love, and the end result, if done the right way, ends up with a baby. You know what I mean? So it also carries a lot. Not safe for Sunday. It carries a lot of weight too, because now you're bringing another person into this world, and that's the byproduct of that love.
Let this guy talk, man. He's jumping up. He's bouncing up and down the seat over there.
I'm
He's
not
got to
bouncing
go.
up and down.
He's got to
I'm
go.
very
Go ahead,
calm.
buddy.
Listen, I'm
Let it rip.
cool and collected. This is a great question. This is a great question, and I think for so many reasons, because, it really boils down to, like Ken was saying, like just understanding one another. Like it's a byproduct of your relationship. Sex it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing, but there's plenty of people having sex. So what does it mean to have sex as a Christian, really? And that's what divides us from the world, is because you can have sex just like you can be a father. Anybody can be a dad, but to be a present father and an involved father, that's a whole different story. You know, anybody can have sex, but the true product of how God created sex, for it to be this beautiful thing between a man and a woman that can display our love for one another, and also the fact to be fruitful and multiply, you know, and to eventually have a child. It's one of the most beautiful things that we can do and display for one another. But, you know, I think it's so important, and I really do go out of my way. And I thank God because on my wedding day, we were at my house, which is probably like 10 minutes from here. And on the ride from my house to here for the wedding ceremony, I drove with my cousin Samson, and it was just me and him in the car. And he goes, hey, you know, he's a little bit older than me. He's probably like 10 years older than me. And he'd been married already for a little while. And he's like, hey, has anybody really talked to you about sex and marriage? And I was like, I mean, not really, I guess. And he's like, let me take a minute. Like, we got 10 minutes, you know, let me really break this down for you. And that was, I was going to say it was the best 10 minutes of my life, but in light of talking about sex, it wasn't. And so,
there that night.
Daniel learned on that. Long story short, Daniel learned on that ride that you don't keep your clothes on.
It was shocking. It was a shocking discovery. But, you know, he said to me, and he just broke it down, was really raw and honest, and was like, you know, everyone goes in thinking they're going to be a pro. Like, you're not. You're not going to be a pro in a very practical sense. Like, your first time can be awkward. It's going to be weird. It's going to be strange, and you got to, like, walk it out. You know, everyone, especially because of the society standard, like, you think you're going to go in there and you know, be you know, like a porn star, because that's what we see growing up, you know? And the reality of it is, you know, that's where I'm saying talk about everything, small and large, because when it comes to talk,
You said it. I mean, jeez.
Oh my gosh, out of control.
It's open mic
Not
night.
safe for Sunday around
You
here.
said
that's
it.
for sure.
I mean, God, I was shocked.
Talk about everything from, you know, the littlest things to the biggest things, and you will
Double dipped.
come on.
Double dipped.
Can we be mature about this?
No, we can't. No, we
I'm
can't.
trying to be, but you're making it difficult.
Don't blame me for your issues, young man. But you know, I think communication is so healthy because there is going to be a lot of communication. You have to discuss even ahead of time, like, you know, what are you comfortable with? Because if you try to go in and you're trying to do something that she's going to be uncomfortable with, oh my God, Ken, get it together, dude. You're the oldest one here and you can't even stop laughing.
He just did a full-on spit take for those listening.
Spit out his water over here.
Let's get to the point, man.
It's like, you know, you got to talk about what you're comfortable with. You got to talk about what you're not comfortable with. Because if you expect to go and start doing things that she's not comfortable with, you're going to be shut down. You're going to feel like she doesn't know how to love you. And it's going to lead to a lot of discourse. And what are you going to do? You know, that lack of communication, it leads to frustration. That frustration built up and not dealt with, it leads to a lot of problems where we go to seek love in other places. And so understanding each other's love language, understanding each other's boundaries, talk about boundaries. Like, you know, you can still have boundaries in marriage. You know, there's certain things I'm not going to do. Like, that is for sure.
Yeah.
And there's certain things, hey, well, let's give it a shot. You know, what the heck? But, you know, I think what I realized is, you know, I would expect a lot. You know, physical touch, that's my love language, you know? And so I would expect a lot. And the reality of it is, like, if I wasn't filling her cup in communication, in her words of affirmation and stuff, if I wasn't giving her words, how could I expect touch? You know, if I wasn't being the man to go and to communicate with her and make sure that, you know, she felt emotionally safe and cared for and valued. Like, I know when I'm doing my job because sex is 10 times better. Because there's that emotional intimacy is already fostered. And so the sex is better. That's the reality of it. And so I think, you know, go into sex and, like, talk about it. And as a man, like, take servanthood into the bedroom. Like, if we're going to be honest, like, serve your wife in the bedroom. Your pleasure is not about you. You know, serve her. Take care of her. Like, she is yours. And make her feel precious, make her feel wanted, and go out of your way to please her, if we're being honest, because it's the servanthood in the bedroom too. You know, we can't just stop being servanthood, you know, servants out, you know, when it comes to inside the bedroom. And so I think that's important, you know, serve her and serve her well in all areas.
Yeah, this is like just like the express physical byproduct of some of the other things we've talked about. Like, what does it mean to lead? You know, so men are called to be initiators, right, in relationship, and sex is no different. We're called to be the initiators, but we're also, as Daniel was saying, we're called to meet their needs and serve. You know, so for sex is way more physical for us. It's way more emotional for women. So if they're emotionally messed up, sorry, brother. You know.
Yeah.
Count it out.
You know, we take it like it's an offense. Like, what is she not? She doesn't like me anymore. She doesn't want me anymore. No, she's just not emotionally there, because sex is really emotional for women. For us, it's like physical. It's like our wives are doing the dishes and we're like, you know, like, but for them, they have to be in a good headspace, a good emotional space, a good heart space. They need to feel loved and cherished. They need to feel secure and all these. So it's really, this is like the physical expression of a lot of the other stuff we're talking about, and what is the man's job here. And so as an initiator, you know, being gentle and being loving and caring and filling the cup, as Daniel was saying, you know, and meeting those needs and understanding, just like we meet their needs and preference them, you know, in other areas, we do it in that area too. And then we're all blessed. You know what I mean? We've initiated something that has fulfilled all of us and has, you know, made the whole thing beautiful, rather than just worrying about our own needs. You know, I mean, think about it really honestly in any other arena. When you only think about your needs, what happens? It's not gonna be good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your selfishness comes out, and the other person feels slighted, and they feel like they're not important and all. So this is a physical expression of what you're already doing or should be doing, you know, when you enter a marriage, spiritually and emotionally.
Yeah, I just wholeheartedly agree with what he's saying, you know, because I think it's when it's when the emotional is fostered well, like that translates into the sex life, because your sex life it's just a byproduct. And so, and I thank my cousin Sam for taking that 10 minutes to really break that down for me, because I'll tell you what, that honeymoon night, like if I didn't have that conversation, man, I think I would have been devastated, you know, because I wasn't prepared at all. So I make sure to go out of my way and have that conversation with any young guy that I'm close to. I make sure to have that conversation with them and just be real, because I think that was one of the best conversations that prepared me for a really practical part of marriage that I otherwise was very unprepared and unequipped for. And to no fault of anybody else, but, you know, sex it's an awkward, and it's a kind of a taboo, and it's a tough thing to discuss because it's very private, you know? And so, and it's very, you know, you feel ashamed about it. It's like Adam and Eve in the garden when they realized they were naked after they partook. You know, it's like, okay, well, like, oh my gosh, we're naked, we're ashamed, you know? So that comes right from the garden, that shame and that guilt we feel about our nakedness. And so it translates even to now when we talk about sex. And, you know, I think it's so important that, especially as men, that we don't shy away from having these conversations, especially with the younger men in our life who are going to be married soon and who are even dating in dating relationships, because sex is out there, you know, and it is tempting and it is prowling, and Satan's going to use it. And he's going to use it to try to tear down women's emotions and views of sex and men's views of sex. And so when they go into whatever relationship they go into, if they have these negative views of sex, it's going to affect them for a long time. And it's important that we're teaching young men and young women to like, appropriate views and honest, good views of sex. And I mean, yeah, I just think I'm a big proponent for it. Sex and conversation about sex.
And good for you, Spencer, for bringing that up and asking, because it is, you guys have said it already a couple times, like it's viewed as taboo, and something that really I never talked to any Christian men about sex life or anything like that. So good for you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thanks, man. And Yeah, and I know we don't have too much time, so I didn't want to tell this story because you brought up about how we kind of grow up and our parents talk to us, and my dad basically in passing gave me some advice which I didn't get at the time, but I was probably like 14 or 15, already like I've been in health class, I was in high school, I already knew, but I was just sitting there eating cereal one fateful morning, just sitting there.
Cookie
Watching
Crisp?
TV.
Oh, I was gonna say, please.
Was it Cookie Crisp?
I'm more of a Frosted Flakes guy.
Oh,
Probably.
okay.
Yeah,
I like Cocoa Pebbles.
Let the man talk. Let's go.
Ken, what's your cereal preference? We all went around.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, right?
Oh, that's
All
good
right,
too.
moving on.
So yeah, I'm just sitting there. My dad walks in, doesn't say anything. There's zero background or context, and he goes, you know, son, my dad used to always say, you know, if you're gonna go in the battle, you got to wear a helmet. End. Pause. Just like that. And I was like,
dropped the mic and walked out.
yeah, pretty much. And I was like, what? What are you
No
talking
context
about?
at all. Like,
Exactly.
Going to war?
That was all I got. That was all I got as a kid, and I just was like, okay,
Devastated.
thanks.
Like dad dropping football references on me this morning.
Oh man. But is there any quick one you want to hit before we head out, or maybe we save it for a part 2?
Yeah, we might have to save it for a
All
part
right,
2.
let's
Yeah,
save
I
it
don't know if
for
it's
a
quick.
part 2.
man, I mean, we got through what? It was 3 questions.
Three questions.
Well, yeah, but this warrants a part 2.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
feel like this conversation was really good.
For sure. And it's nice to be able to impart some wisdom, and especially different walks of life. Like the 3 of us grew up differently, and we're at different ages, and it's nice to hear it from, I guess, an array of different people about
Oh yeah.
these 3 questions that we got to. But yeah, man, I think on that note, we probably will end up bringing this into an episode 2 and kind of getting through the rest of this list. So a little to be continued.
Hey, let us know. Send us a message in the DMs on Instagram and Facebook too if our listeners have any questions. You know, we would love to answer them.
Seriously, if you're a young adult, and you're thinking about marriage, you're ready to get married, or you're in the dating scene, however, I mean, send us some messages. Like
We could get some interesting ones.
Yeah, that's
Just a
okay.
warning.
This is not safe.
Not safe.
This
for
is definitely not
Sunday.
safe. So there's nothing off topic.
Yeah, we're not afraid to.
I don't think
to
this
tackle
episode was
anything.
safe for Saturday.
I wouldn't even do this at the water cooler at work.
We're gonna need a disclaimer.
They'll call HR on you if you do that.
Yeah, no kidding. But all right, guys, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and social media, Facebook.
Smash that subscribe button.
Yeah,
Yeah.
smash that subscribe button.
Hey, let's just give it up for Spence too.
Yeah,
Spence
yeah,
is our
my
editor,
man.
man.
Yeah.
He's our
That's it.
editor.
That's
Yeah, I forgot to say
Yeah,
that.
you didn't even introduce that part.
Spencer is our producer.
Yeah.
He does a great job editing
thank you.
the
Thank you.
audio, and he's working on some videos and things like that. We'll have some more of that coming in the future. But yeah, Spencer's doing a great job. So happy to have
man.
you on board.
You have to be here. You guys
Yeah,
make it
man.
easy. Appreciate
Yeah.
you guys.
Oh, we make it. We're good. That means we're
Look
professionals.
at that.
We're professionals.
Except when Ken laughs when we talk about sex. Like
No,
a
that was
2-year-old,
good.
dude.
That was good. That was so good. That was so good. So a listener told me that we have to end every episode by talking about one scene of The Lord of the Rings. So you ready?
Yes.
Nobody told you that.
I can guarantee you they did.
Nobody told you that.
I won't make
Spencer, tell him how disappointed you are.
I know. I told.
We've
One Sunday
already
I
had
came
this
up to him and I
conversation.
said, "I need to rebuke you
Yes.
for the
yes.
sin you've committed."
Public rebuke. I agree.
I'm not actually going to do that. So until next time.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace and love.
The Not Safe for Sunday podcast was recorded at Conquerors for Christ Church. This episode was produced by Spencer Berriman. If you like what you've heard, you can follow us on social media at NSFS Podcast. If you'd like to join us for a Sunday service, you can find us at 972 Reed Road in North Dartmouth, Massachusetts.